So we've installed Passport, Passport Local Mongoose, Express Session, and lastly, we'll install Connect Flash. So we're going to add all of these as references in app.js. Actually, Passport Local Mongoose will go elsewhere. So I've installed these. Again, the list is right here. It's on Blackboard. So those are the packages. Just run npm install and those 5 package names. So I'm going to open up app.js. So we'll want Passport. We need our Express Session. So I'll just reference that with the name session because it's shorter to type. Require our Connect Flash package. We'll just call that one Flash. And I'm going to create one variable called local strategy. This one's slightly different. We're going to require not just Passport local, but specifically in there, we want the .strategy class. So the strategy is what method of authentication are we using? So we'll want these 4 references. The Passport Local Mongoose we're going to use in our model class. We don't need to reference it here. So what I've added are lines 11 through 14. We will come back and add some more stuff into app.js, but not yet. Our next step is we're going to build views, simple views for register and log in. And on our index page, we'll create links to those 2 files. So we installed 5 packages with npm install, and we're referencing 4 of them here. And we'll come back to this file. So we're going to make 2 new views. We're going to make a register.ejs and a login.ejs. We're going to put those in a subfolder of views called auth. So in my project directory, inside of views, I'm going to make a new subfolder, new directory called auth. Inside of auth, I'm going to make the new EJS file called register. So it's views, auth, register. So in here, we'll include our header. And we may as well include our footer as well. In case we we'll set up a main section. We'll set up a form that'll do a post. Our form will post to auth/register. And we'll just set up a basic username, password, confirm, and submit. So on here, let's see, well, I'll use it. This stuff is all just plain old HTML. So to save my time, I'll just copy my field sets. Need to make sure I add type equals password here. Call this one confirm. We'll make my button blue with the BTN primary class. So text box, 2 password boxes, and a submit button. This is not exactly rocket science for you guys. We'll just put on a little separator and say, and if we'll give them a link to log in, so there's our register form. Header at the top, a heading, and a basic HTML form. So there's no server-side code on this at all. So we should put a link to this form on our home page. So I'll open up index.ejs, and down at the bottom, we'll put in 2 links. One that'll go to auth login, login or to our home page will have these two links. One that'll go to our login form, one that'll go to our register form. Our login form is going to look almost identical to the register form, except our button will say login, and we don't need a confirm password section. So to create my login page, I'm going to copy everything from register, just highlight it all, copy all the text. And inside of our auth folder, let's make a view, an EJS file called login. Paste everything in here. I'll change my heading to say login. Our form action will go to login. We can take out our confirm password, and my button will say login instead. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I'll change that to say need access, and that'll go to register instead. Thank you for pointing that out. So login will have a link at the bottom for register, and register has a link at the bottom for login. So we've just created these two new views as well as added links to them at the bottom of our index page. So now if I go back to my home page, I can log in or register. Obviously, we're going to need to register before we can log in. How come the 404? You got it. We haven't set up a route file to tell our application what to do here. So rather than mapping these through articles or index, we're going to create a new route here. So what we're going to do is in our routes folder, we're going to create a new JavaScript file called auth. So anything to do with authentication will get handled here. So it will be similar to this one. We'll need to require express. And create a router variable that's equal to express dot router. And at the bottom, we'll need to export this. We'll need to make it public. So that'll go down at the very bottom. So what code will we need here so our application can actually display that register EJS view we just created? Yep, so we're going to run a router.get at /register. We'll just use res.render. And the view is auth register. So this is the view we want to load. If I go back to my home page, click my register link again, hopefully this is going to display our form. Okay. It didn't load. Here's a hint. There's actually not a problem here. This code's actually correct. We can do our login as well. We're going to have to do one other thing in order to get these to work. Any ideas where we go, why the views aren't loading? Yeah, we've put this here, but our app.js, we haven't told it to map any requests that have include /auth in the path, that this is the file that will define what views to load. So we're going to have to go back to our app.js. Remember, right, we added this. The Express generator put those two lines here automatically, but we added this one. So we need to link our auth.js root file in. So under here, we need to do the same. So connect up our auth file. That's the first step. And the second step is map it to any request that includes /auth in the URL. So again, we added line 37. Lines 35 and 36 are built by the generator. Whenever we get requests at /auth, use our auth controller. This should fix the 404 error now. Now our application should know what to do when we click that login or register link. Hopefully. Okay, well, I got an error, but it is crashing. I'm not getting 404. What do we have to do? What's missing? Why are we getting this error? Remember, when we've loaded all of our other views, so when we were loading any of our article pages that used our header, we had to pass in a page title to the header. So when we load our auth register here, we also need to pass in that value. It should be this way. So load the view and give it a page title, because our header EJS is, do I open that back up? Right. Header is trying to display a variable called title. So any page that uses the header, we have to set that variable. So we're going to do the same thing here. Title is login. Now we should be able to load both of our forms.
It's like it's not running the application, it's crashing in terminal.
Okay, can you provide a little bit of information as to what it says in terminal?
I'm trying to figure that out.
Okay. So now when I go to log in, I get this form. If I want to register, I get my registration page. If I fill out these forms and click submit, I'm going to get an error because we haven't written any post handlers yet. Right? Our application doesn't know what to do. Now we'll get an off found when I run a post. Brandon, did you get any information?
It's saying a router.use requires a web function of document.
Do you have the module.exports at the bottom? Of auth.js. This file has to be made public. Okay.
There we go. Got the for live export.
Okay. So we're going to need, like in the video, so now we've got our forms, we've got our application is set up to show those forms, but there's no security. There's still nothing happening in terms of the security. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to need to configure Passport in app.js. And then we're also going to need a model that will be able to talk to our MongoDB and actually create a collection and store user accounts in our database. So let's configure some of the stuff we need, some of the stuff we saw in the video in here. So we have these 4 packages referenced. Now in we've got a whole bunch of app.use commands for using all of these packages. We need to enable a couple of things. So here, after this app.use section, in my file, it's lines 29 to 33. Enable flash for showing messages. So we just app.use flash. We're going to want that. This will be our Passport config section. We're going to do a lot of the things that he did in the video. The first thing we're going to do is enable session support, because Passport will use sessions for managing our user login status. And in here, there were 3 parameters in the video he set up when he enabled session support. The first one is a secret. So this can be any random string. So Passport uses this to encrypt the session data. So I'll just call this, I don't know, lesson 8 auth. You can make yours as secret as you like. We're going to say resave equal to true, which, as he mentioned, the author mentioned in the video, that means every page request, the session is refreshed, even if nothing on the page changes. That will make sure sessions are being kept alive. And the last thing was save uninitialized. We'll set to false, meaning don't bother initializing a session until we actually have some data to store in it or read out of it. And I'm missing a closing round bracket here. So we're going to initialize sessions with these properties. We want to initialize Passport. and initialize the passport.session function. We're going to need a few more lines here, a few other things. This is going to have to do with our model, which we haven't created. So we've done some of the configuration, but not all of it. So I've added everything you see here. We've added. So we're going to go up to models. This is now where we need to build a model. I'm going to right click on my models. I'm going to make a new JavaScript file. And I'm going to save this as account.js, kind of following along with what he did in the video. So it's lowercase and it's singular. Sure. And notice here, these are functions, flash, bracket, bracket, session, initialize, bracket, bracket, and session, bracket, bracket. So you need these brackets here in all of these calls. So in account.js, we're basically making an account model. Now, one of the neat things about using the Passport local strategy is it presets up a lot of stuff. It'll do a lot under the hood for us. So we're going to need Mongoose here because this has to talk to our database. We're going to create a schema variable like we did before in our other model. We have a Mongoose schema. Now remember, we installed 5 NPM packages, but we only referenced 4 of them in app.js. The one we didn't reference was Passport local Mongoose. It goes in here in our account model. So we'll require it. And the name of the package is separated by hyphens. We're creating a local variable. If you want to call it PLM, because that's easier, you can. So this represents that Passport local Mongoose package. So this is a package that lets us interface with MongoDB for storing usernames and passwords. So I'm going to create a schema with a capital A because that's our convention. And we're just going to define 2 fields, the username Now, in the video, he didn't use username and password. He used, I think, birth date and something else. Because username and password, they're actually baked right into Passport local Mongoose. We don't actually have to define them. They're already there under the hood. And now we call this plugin function. That connects our account schema up with the Passport local Mongoose module. And we'll make it public to the rest of the app. Again, we'll use module.exports. This is similar to what we have in our article model. We're making the model public and calling it account. So take this variable, make it public of type mongoose model with the same name. This is similar code to what we have in article.js. Same thing at the bottom. We created a schema. We've made it public with that name. So now we need to connect our model up in app.js as well. So when we're trying to use Passport to authenticate, our application knows where our definition of a user account is. It's in this file. So we'll add that code, and then we're going to need to stop for today. So back here in app.js, we'll want to use the account model we built. We'll just use require to reference that model file we built. And Passport has a function called create strategy. So what type of authentication are we using? Well, we're using the strategy we just built in our account model. The last thing we need to configure here are two methods. One is called serialize user. And then its opposite number, which is deserialize user. So basically that allows us to store information about that user account in the session, is serializing it. Deserializing it will let us read that information. So we can use that for logging the user in or creating their account and storing who they are. I know this seems like a lot of magic because we're not writing these functions. These things are just built into Passport and we're just calling them. But all of these are pieces we need as part of the configuration in order for Passport to work. You don't have to use Passport. We could simply write our own authentication scheme. But as the announcer says in the video, there's been an awful lot of work that has gone into this. And this has been tested and refined over a number of years. And this is typically what most Node and Express applications are going to use. So we may as well use it too. Okay, so our plan for next week, we're going to pause here. What we'll need to do next week, if this is configured properly, we won't have tons to do. We basically are going to need to do three things. We're going to need to write a post handler for register that will use Passport to create a new account. We'll need to write a post handler for login that will use Passport to try and authenticate the user. And then we'll want to modify our articles.js so that all of these pages become private. We're going to need Passport to be checking whether we have an authenticated user, yes or no, before we let somebody into any of those pages. Okay, I will put my repository up on GitHub and we'll resume kind of from this point next week. And hopefully it won't take us too long to get this working, and then we'll be able to also look at doing perhaps a social media login ability as well. So users can log in either with a username and password in our MLab database or with their Facebook account.